Good morning, everyone in virtual land. I am so excited to open the 35th EMI SIG Annual Meeting with a return to our tradition in singing the national anthem. Some of you will recognize the voice of Cammie Cook from our 2018 annual meeting here in my hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Go Lobos! But in order to raise that bar, as Chief has so lovingly reminded us in our last year's virtual meeting, this year she'll be joined by her brother Kyle Woods for a duet. Please welcome Cammie and Kyle to our virtual stage.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, and what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming,
whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming,
and the rockets red glide, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now that's a way to start our second and hopefully last virtual annual meeting. A very special thank you to Cammie Cook and Kyle Woods. And if that last name sounds familiar, it should. Both of these gifted singers are children of our equally gifted subcommittee coordinator, Berna Woods. What can I say? We take Chief's #1 rule of family first very seriously. And with that, that's a tough act to follow. I think our next speaker is up for the task. I'd like to introduce David Stuhan, the outgoing chair of the EMI SIG Steering Committee. David has more than 23 years of professional and leadership experience in emergency management, security management, emergency services, disaster recovery, homeland security, as well as national security missions focused on high consequences, assets, facilities, and operations. This experience involved managing and leading organizations engaged in nuclear and non-nuclear classified programs and underground facilities and operations, direct security and emergency management support to the line organizations, multi-jurisdictional drill and exercise programs, hazards identification and analysis, emergency response capabilities, and fire department operations. This diverse set of experience was derived from the Nevada National Security Site, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and Sandia National Labs, where he is currently the Senior Manager for Emergency Management. He is a certified emergency manager through the International Association of Emergency Managers and has a master's degree in emergency management, complemented by a bachelor's degree in business management. Please feel free to enter any comments or questions like, when do you sleep, Mr. Stuhan, into our chat tool for David to address after his message. Welcome to our virtual stage, Mr. Stuhan.
Good morning, EMI SIG members and distinguished guests. My name is Dave Stuhan. I'm the Senior Manager for Emergency Management at Sandia National Laboratories and currently serve as your EMI SIG Steering Committee Chair. It's an honor to be here for the 35th annual meeting. Our theme this year is 35 years of collaboration and information sharing in pursuit of excellence. This is our second virtual meeting since we were all impacted by COVID-19. The 21st century pandemic that we all hope would never happen in our lifetimes. The United States has made great strides since the pandemic began back in 2019, and there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. During this pandemic, EMI SIG has highlighted its incredible value through the continued sharing of information, some related to COVID-19, such as return to work plans, safe work practices. Some are related to conducting drills and exercises in a virtual environment, and some by simply sharing lessons learned and best practices. EMI SIG members should be proud of the amazing work you do to protect our workforce, the public, property, environment, and our important DOE NNSA missions. Many, if not most of you, never stopped working during the pandemic. You are on the front lines enabling the mission, supporting your respective workforces, coordinating response to COVID-19 cases, and disinfecting of facilities, and leading or supporting vaccine planning and operations. It has no doubt been a long and hard journey to date, but each of you is owed a level of gratitude for your efforts. I want to take a moment to thank our EMI SIG members, subcommittees, and our steering committee for the unwavering dedication to make EMI SIG what it is today, which is an invaluable forum to make DOE NNSA emergency management more comprehensive, resilient, and simply better today than it was yesterday. You each really make a difference. A fun fact, there are 1,200 active EMI SIG members that are engaged and not simply sitting on the sidelines. This is a very informative data point, which truly highlights the relevance and importance of what you do. I also want to express my gratitude to the amazing EMI SIG operations staff, the exceptional professionals behind the scenes, making this annual meeting a reality, and really what they do all year to make EMI SIG a success. Send them a big virtual thank you throughout the meeting so they really know how much you appreciate them. I do have to say I'm looking forward to putting the virtual meetings behind us in the near future and getting back to face-to-face meetings, which allows us to engage in ad hoc conversations in the hallway, showing off our booths and products, and having the opportunity to network in person, and maybe even shake a hand again. Again, welcome to this year's annual meeting. I encourage you to read over the agenda, use the annual meeting app, participate in the excellent briefings, presentations, and meetings, and connect with a new colleague you've never met before. And have fun throughout this week. We can't say thanks enough. Enjoy the annual meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Stuhan, for your message. And also, I look forward to enjoying your questions and answers with our headquarters gentlemen after our morning break. I'd also like to thank you for your leadership from 2019 to 2021, serving as the EMI SIG Steering Committee Chair. It's been a real pleasure working with you. Almost all the time. No, just kidding. It's been wonderful. We've really come a long way. I now have the distinct honor of introducing John Juski, Deputy Associate Administrator for NNSA's Office of Emergency Operations. Mr. Juski has an extensive emergency management experience working in multiple operational and policy roles at many levels and serving customers ranging from local communities to the White House. John comes to NNSA from the Department of the Interior, where he was the acting director and assistant director in the Office of Emergency Management, responsible for coordinating departmental activities, developing policies consistent with federal laws, regulation, guidance, and direction, advancing preparedness and response policy, planning, exercise, and implementation activities. Prior to joining DOI, John served as the Climate Policy Advisor responsible for collaborating with FEMA and with other state and federal partners to advance FEMA's priorities around risk reduction and catastrophic readiness. Before joining FEMA, John was a meteorologist with NOAA's National Weather Service. He has a BS in Geography Meteorology from Western Illinois University and studied aeronautical engineering at Parks College of St. Louis University. He was born and raised in Chicago, but currently calls Alexandria, Virginia, home. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Juski to our virtual stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Juski, and I am the Deputy Associate Administrator for Emergency Operations, also known as NA40. On behalf of Chief Hopkins and the entire NA40 team, I want to welcome you to the Emergency Management Issues Special Interest Group, or EMI SIG, annual meeting. This year, we are celebrating 35 years of collaboration and information sharing in pursuit of excellence. It's a little mind-boggling to think about how far we've come in the last 35 years. Just for some perspective, 35 years ago this year, we experienced at least a couple of infamous disasters, the most notable being the Chernobyl nuclear accident. But that year, we also experienced the Challenger disaster. The US economy was soaring, relatively speaking, as the Dow Jones Index hit a record 45.71 points in June. For comparison's sake, we're now hovering right around the 35,000 mark. And Microsoft launched its initial public offering. And on the pop culture front, Guns N' Roses signed their first record deal, Top Gun premiered in May, and the Oprah Winfrey Show was first broadcast nationally. All this, and airport security wasn't even a thing yet. It would still be several years before the internet would become widely available to the general public, and another decade and a half before smartphones would find their way into our hands and pockets. Now, we all know of the incredible advancements in technology, communication, transportation, medicine, and engineering over the past 3.5 decades. Evolutionary advancements in these fields change the way we gather, process, and share information. It is now easier than ever for us to connect, shop, be entertained, travel, and even improve our health. Unfortunately, we've had plenty of opportunities to learn and grow in the emergency management realm during this time as well. Events such as 9/11, Deepwater Horizon, the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, Hurricane Katrina, the 2011 Japanese earthquake and tsunami that precipitated the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and more recently, Hurricanes Irma and Maria have helped to refine and define emergency management training, exercise, and doctrine to better prepare for all hazards at perhaps greater scales than we had previously imagined. More recently, man-made incidents such as the Colonial Pipeline ransomware cyber attack and any number of evolving domestic terrorism threats have forced us to rethink many of our plans, policies, and procedures. Yet, as we've experienced over the past 18 months, none of these technological advancements or lessons learned from the wide range of disasters I mentioned could fully prepare us for the crushing impacts of a global pandemic. Last year at this time, Chief Hopkins addressed the EMI SIG annual meeting and highlighted the unique environment brought about by the pandemic that we were all adapting to at that time. We were leveraging technology to remain connected, but at a distance. And I'm not sure anyone would have imagined at that time that we would still be working under similar conditions today. On a positive note, despite the longest disaster any of us have ever faced in our careers, it's tough to find examples where we've really skipped a beat. Your perseverance and commitment are beyond noteworthy. The EMI SIG and its members continue to exude the highest level of dedication and professionalism in supporting the enterprise's mission. I also want to take a moment to recognize the team of incredible professionals within our policy division, NA41, who built off the great success of last year's virtual meeting to produce this year's virtual forum. We will again leverage all available technologies in order to provide the best possible product for you. And while I've learned to really appreciate virtual meetings and evolving technologies, I'm hopeful that we will be able to return to some semblance of in-person meetings by this time next year. Speaking of returning to normal, it does look like there's finally some light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, although we must remain cautious as recent trends related to the Delta variant are heading in the wrong direction. We're making progress toward re-entry into our office spaces across the enterprise, but it still may take some time as many items of concern must be resolved before we can return to the office. I urge you all to remain patient as we work through this incredibly complex problem set. With all of this in mind, The Office of Emergency Operations will look to capitalize off of lessons learned, not only from the pandemic, but from the variety of natural and man-made incidents we've endured, as well as from exercises and other learning opportunities. We are currently nearing the finish line on a strategic plan which will provide a framework for NA40 activities from 2021 through 2024. So far, the plan focuses on 4 mission priorities or goals. The first goal is very specific to NA40, but it is directly related to our collective experience over the past 18 months. We will look for ways to strengthen our organizational health and improve the overall quality of the work life of our team. Next, we will look to improve our capacity to provide operative emergency management support. This goal is based on the recognition that recent trends show disasters and incidents becoming more complex, more frequent, and often for longer durations. The next goal will focus on helping to enhance the readiness posture of the DOE emergency management system. And finally, we will look to lead the time-phased integration of the new federal mission resilience strategy across the department by serving as the focal point for COOP and higher level continuity programs, assisting the Secretary of Energy and an SA administrator and their staffs or other designated officials in executing the national continuity policy. The NA40 strategic plan is part of a broader framework to increase the department's level of preparedness to respond to and recover from incidents. The plan follows the direction provided in the DOE strategic plan and the NNSA strategic vision, both of which have origins linked to broader national level strategies aimed at ensuring the safety and security of the nation in an increasingly complex global security environment. These national strategies, including the National Security Strategy of 2017 and the Nuclear Posture Review of 2018, address emerging and persistent threats that are magnified by rapid technological advancements, non-observance of international treaties and norms, and the changing character of warfare. And our challenges don't stop there. We must be cognizant of the dynamic, potentially more complicated landscape that lies ahead. Climate change promises to reshape our natural hazards mindset, not only in terms of scale, frequency, and intensity, but also in terms of geography. Think of the recent heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, or crippling snowstorms in the Deep South. And seasonality, think of hurricane seasons and fire seasons expanding to include all 12 months. As technology continues to simplify and in many ways improve our lives, we will also become more vulnerable to those who seek to disrupt our way of life and target those technologies on which we've become so dependent. All this, coupled with aging infrastructure, an impending wave of retirements, constricting budgets, shifting demographics, and an incredibly complex political landscape, will force us to do things very differently in the very near future. So with all of this in mind, we absolutely must enhance our ability to respond more efficiently, manage situations more urgently, and communicate more effectively. We need new approaches using existing and new technologies to assist us in managing crises. The technology must be reliable, scalable, and affordable. And as we move forward, we'll continue to need the ability and agility to respond effectively when called upon. How will we get there? I'm not sure anyone can rightfully answer that question with any certainty. But as emergency managers, we know that we can rely on each other and that we will move on to accomplish great things together. We just need to remain proactive and pay close attention to trends as our emergency management landscape continues to evolve. And it's through forums like the EMI SIG that we can build our collective knowledge and leverage our passion for the mission to drive the change needed to accomplish the goals that I highlighted earlier in my remarks. Please use this incredible forum with your colleagues, not just today or this week, but year-round, to improve your capabilities and capacities so that we can be there to face the challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Let me close by saying that I recognize everyone is busy, and so I just want to thank you for your time and your commitment to participate in the EMI SIG Annual Meeting. I look forward to learning from you and with you this week. Thank you.
Thank you for that inspiring message, Mr. Jeske. And it looks like we're a little ahead of schedule. So let me ask you one question that I've been asked, and it's always a fun one to answer. What keeps you up at night?
Well, thank you for that off-the-cuff question. I think as a professional in this field, I think almost everything keeps me awake at night, to be honest. And I think most of the folks that are listening in right now probably would say the same. I overthink things a little bit. But I am a proponent of playing the what if game. You know, we all sit around on blue sky days and we do our jobs and we think we know we have everything well in hand, but I always like to tease people out and say, well, hold on, what if this thing happened? What if that thing happened? I kind of developed that strategy back when I was a meteorologist, because working in California, we had a lot of blue sky days. And so folks who would sit back and flip on the TV and kind of rest on their laurels, well, I would make them uncomfortable by throwing radar simulations at them or something of that nature. But the longer, I guess, answer to this question, when I really think about tomorrow and beyond for our not only just NNSA's emergency management piece, but the DOE enterprise and beyond, we have an aging workforce in general that concerns me. I know there's just so much institutional knowledge that is kept within this elite group, and as people are walking away, it's really difficult to kind of port that information over to the new folks who are coming up into the ranks. So that part concerns me. I think we have on a broader scale, we have a challenge, as there are a number of emerging threats that are not well understood. I think when we look at the pandemic, it really teased out the fact that we thought we had everything well in hand again, but you play the what if game with the pandemic and people say, we'll get there. We've got plans. I mean, we can figure it out. And now that we're 18 months into it, I don't think there's anyone on this call that would say that we've got it completely figured out even just yet. So, and now with the Delta variant, we see additional curveballs being thrown at us and additional variants on the horizon. I think, I said it in my remarks. I mean, we're relying on technology. Technology is fantastic. It makes our lives easier. We have more access to information today than we ever have in our history. But we're also more vulnerable because of that. So I worry about, getting into situations where, whether it's a cyber attack or a natural hazard that takes down our communications infrastructure, how do we talk to each other? And I think I saw this firsthand when I was responding to the hurricanes in USVI in Puerto Rico. I was part of the Department of the Interior back then. I showed up on the ground. I had my Verizon cell phone. I had my AT&T cell phone. I had a sat phone. And when you land on the ground and there is literally no communications, those all become bricks in a heartbeat. And so if we get into a real world event where we have seriously degraded communications infrastructure, how are we going to communicate with each other? We can talk about devolution, and yeah, it makes sense on paper. But again, how do you talk to all those folks if we're not able to use all those pieces of technology? Beyond that, climate change concerns me. We, as a meteorologist and a climatologist back in the day, we saw trends back in the early 90s that we thought would evolve over the next 50 to 100 years. And here we are just 30 years later, and we've reached most of those milestones already that we were talking about just, in that recent time. So that makes me a little concerned. And then I think we just, we're stepping into a much more challenging kind of environment for getting almost anything done in this country. I think we can all see that on the political landscape, things have become more polarized with time. I think demographics in general, you see cities are changing. There's for the first time in history, we have more people living in cities than we do in rural areas in this country. So what does that do for the way we communicate, the way we prepare for cities or rural areas or anything else? And again, I'm talking on a broader scale than just DOE and NNSA, but these are things that I think, unless we're thinking through them logically now and putting money toward the solutions now, these solutions don't get any cheaper with time. And so if we don't have money to fix these things today, I'm not sure how we ever will. So these I don't mean to be so bleak. I think that's part of what drives me in this profession, is that we have some, quote unquote, unsolvable problems or things that are really complex puzzles, if you will. And so that's where I come into this next wave of recruiting. I mean, who are we recruiting to fill our shoes going forward? Are we looking for folks with PhDs in emergency management? Maybe for some positions. But I mean, for me, it's folks who are critical thinkers, you can plug into atypical situations and come up with fantastic idea sets that cause you to think in different ways. And folks who are, team players, collaborative, we can't do it on our own. We all have to pull together to come up with those solutions. So that's a long, rambling kind of answer to your question. But I mean, the short answer is everything keeps me awake at night. My job is to try to compartmentalize some of that and make some useful meaning out of that. So I hope that answers the question.
That was wonderful. And obviously you, like Mr. Stuhan, suffer from sleepless nights. Yeah, that was a lot. And I think my teenage daughter, as well as everybody else that has teenagers, would be remiss to say they don't even know what bricks mean. But if they ever had to deal with a non-working mobile device, there's a problem. But yes, you mentioned so many things that I believe some more questions will be coming forth from those points that you made. And we'll be able to get to those after our break. But for now, I'd like us to prepare for our distinguished guest. Mr. Jeske, will you do the honor of introducing the United States Department of Energy Deputy Secretary David Turk, who is joining us live from Washington, D.C.?
I would be honored to. Good morning, officially, everyone. And again, welcome to EMI SIG 35th year. This is really impressive. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce Mr. David Turk, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy. Mr. Turk has an extensive background in nuclear security and clean energy innovation. And as our Deputy Secretary, he is also our Senior Emergency Management Official. Prior to his nomination as Deputy Secretary, Mr. Turk was the Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, where he focused on helping countries around the world tackle their clean energy transitions. He also directed reports on the digitalization of energy systems, the future of clean hydrogen, and a project tracking progress on a wide range of clean energy technologies. During the Obama administration, Mr. Turk coordinated international technology and clean energy efforts at DOE. During this time, he helped spearhead the launch of Mission Innovation, a global effort to enhance clean energy innovation. Mr. Turk also served as Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director at the National Security Council, where he coordinated interagency legislative affairs efforts by the full range of national security agencies, and provided legislative advice to the National Security Council. He also previously worked at the U.S. Department of State, including as Deputy Special Envoy for Climate Change and helping to coordinate New START Treaty ratification efforts in the U.S. Senate. Earlier in his career, Mr. Turk worked in both the U.S. Senate, primarily on national security issues, and as the staff director of the National Security Subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee. Upon Mr. Turk's confirmation, Secretary Granholm stated that she was grateful to have such a blockbuster deputy at her side. Personally, taking the liberty of speaking on behalf of the emergency management enterprise, we look forward to tackling all current and future challenges under your leadership. So without any further delay, please welcome Mr. David Turk, the Deputy Secretary of Energy.
Well, thank you very much, John, for that incredible introduction. I wish my mom would have been listening to that introduction. She would have hopefully been very proud. And thank you for all of your incredible work, and Jen and the full team as well. It's a pleasure to be with you all, and even more importantly, it's a pleasure to be supporting all of you in your incredibly important work. I'll just spend a few minutes giving you a sense of how Secretary Granholm and I are viewing how we can best support your incredible work and appreciating what you do. And then more than happy to answer any questions that you all have as well, if that's useful for you all and the various folks who are part of this webinar. Let me first say what a pleasure it is to join you all at this 2021 Emergency Management Issues Special Interest Group Annual Meeting. That is a mouthful. I'm not even sure what that full acronym would come out to, but that is definitely a mouthful. And certainly acknowledging that this has been a productive year for this group, but also acknowledging in very challenging circumstances as well. I think this has been a challenging year and a half for all of us, frankly, in our professional lives and our personal lives as well. And even in the face of the pandemic, it's impressive to see what you all have achieved. Updated guidelines for continuity of operations, creating new tools for keeping DOE and NSA staffers safe, improved training courses, again, all in the midst of this pandemic and the incredible teamwork that was responsible for that kind of progress. Even through partial work, this 35th year of collaboration and information sharing in pursuit of excellence has been a tremendous success, and we should all acknowledge the not just the challenges we've been in. We've got still a little bit ways to go through this pandemic, but the successes and what we've been able to do in the face of this challenging situation. And if you remember nothing else from what I say today, I hope you take away from this just a tremendous sense of how much we value everything you've done to protect DOE assets, especially in this year and a half. And no doubt that your work will become more and more important in the year and years to come. And assets, when I say assets, is of course our facilities, but even more importantly, our people and our communities that we all work in. From the deep freeze that put Texas's electrical grid over the brink, to the drought, the heat waves, the wildfires that have ravaged our western states, and even left our eastern states in a haze from time to time. We know that the impacts of extreme weather, the impacts of climate change are here. They're intensifying. We can and we should expect even more challenges for you all to face into the future. And we need to make sure that we're prepared to take those on. As these extreme weather events continue and intensify, the costs are increasing as well. In the 1980s, we were paying on average $17 billion per year to clean up after extreme weather crises. By 2010, it was $84 billion a year, and in the last 5 years, the costs have averaged $125 billion per year. So just a staggering amount of financial costs, but even more so the human dimension, the human cost, the human trauma, the communities that have been put through such challenge. From our headquarters to our national labs, from our power administrations to our stewardship of the entire nuclear weapons arsenal, we have a huge footprint. We have a huge footprint, a huge range of responsibilities that are on all of our shoulders. And as these extreme weather events strain our systems and infrastructure, we need folks capable of anticipating dangers, of mitigating destruction, most importantly, protecting DOE and NSA staff in our communities, as I've said before, the people, the communities that we all are protecting. And what you've shown in just the last few months of these challenges is when disaster strikes, you're prepared to spring into action and do the kinds of things necessary to get done. Twice this year, for example, you've had to launch a wildland fire response efforts at the nuclear security site in Nevada, twice just at one facility over the last several months. We were fortunate in those situations to avoid real damage, which is a testament to your efficient, incredibly effective work. But as these extreme weather events increase in magnitude, the importance of emergency managers, planners, coordinators, responders, and the full team assembled here will only grow forward. So we know that we've made some progress. We know that there's a lot of challenges still to come. Let me give you just one example of building resilience and forward thinking, exemplified by this group and throughout our DOE complex more generally. NREL, our National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado, the Flatiron campus now has a solar array, wind turbines connected to a microgrid. Just 2 months after that system was put in place, a transformer exploded off-site, creating a local blackout. But with the microgrid humming, power to key buildings on campus continued, ensuring that weeks of critically important research was not lost because of that forward-looking mentality, that planning ahead, by really building resilience by design, making our facilities, making our operations, making our communities as resilient as they can be. So I know this group specializes in mitigating disasters before they happen. I think that's a great saying. That's a great concept of what we're trying to do, to be prepared to move as quickly as we possibly can. So again, if you remember nothing else, certainly that Secretary Granholm and I, the senior leadership team here in headquarters in Washington, very much appreciates, deeply values what you're doing. And we look forward to supporting, to make sure you've got the resources, to make sure you have the support that you need to be incredibly successful in everything that you're dealing with out there. So with that, thank you for making time for me today. Happy to take any and all questions, and certainly, again, do what we can to support the team and be part of this incredible network and this incredible team, all learning from each other in real time. So back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Turk. I really appreciate you joining us, and I can attest that this group is amazing. And I am just proud to be part of it. And my team and I are just continually blessed to see what amazing things this community can do. We do have the first question that has come in, and I'm sure this is a question on a lot of people's minds. Will there be mask and vaccine mandates as we return to the workplace?
Well, thanks, Jen, and thanks for those comments, and thanks for all of your leadership, and John, and all of our other colleagues. And again, thanks for everybody's patience and community and working through the challenges of the last year and a half. And this has not been a linear process. There have been twists and turns along the way, and we all need to adapt along the way as well. As you've all seen on the mask issue, what we've seen is, because of the Delta variant, because of the increases in numbers, largely happening with the unvaccinated population, unfortunately, and we really need to minimize that unvaccinated population as much as we can. And I know you've seen very strong signals coming from the Secretary, from this administration. For all of you who have not gotten vaccinated so far, please get vaccinated. Please do that for yourselves, your families, your communities. This is the solution. This is the way we get out of this. And if we don't get to those percentages of high vaccination, frankly, we're going to have challenges going forward that affects all of us, including those who are vaccinated. So please, 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 maybe if that's the one thing you remember, please, please, please get vaccinated if you've not gotten vaccinated already. Because of this increase in the Delta variant, and because even if you are vaccinated, and you will, the numbers are incredibly striking. If you're vaccinated, you could be a carrier from time to time. Your risk of serious hospitalization and death is so far decreased. But because it's still some risk of transmission, we do have now new requirements to wear masks in our DOE buildings, unless you're by yourself in your office or in a situation where you can be isolated in that kind of way. I know for me personally, it was not encouraging to have to come back last week and to put a mask on. I think we appreciate being able to breathe without a mask, but it's something we need to do in this time period just to make sure that we're doing our part to slow the spread. So the mask requirement is back in DOE buildings. And again, we'll follow CDC guidance and the administration guidance to make sure that we're doing this based on the public health experts and the public health risk, and being part of the solution. And then on the regime more generally, President Biden did announce last Thursday, that we're going to a vaccine or testing mandate. So you have to be vaccinated, or you have to be part of a rigorous testing regime. Those are the options in terms of DOE facilities and DOE federal employees and broader federal employees. And we see a lot of private employees going in this way as well. Having been both tested and vaccinated, the vaccine is not very challenging. It's not that much of a prick. A couple times if you get the Pfizer, once if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And the testing is not very pleasant. I'm sure we've all gone through the testing regime. I was at my first international trip last week, going to Italy for the G20 energy ministerial meeting. And they were incredibly aggressive about the testing, and really going up there quite aggressive. Tingle was not the right word. It was more strong than a tingle. So again, maybe that's another reason to just go ahead and get vaccinated, get it taken care of, get it once. You don't have to get tested repeatedly. going forward along those lines. And of course, there are accommodations for those who can't be vaccinated going forward. I think everybody knows that as well. So that's the regime. And of course, we'll try to continue sharing information, putting it out information based on what the experts are telling us, based on what the science is telling us, again, so that we as part of the DOE community can be part of the solution going forward. So we'll adjust as we're able to going forward.
That's great. I know the students out here are not very happy. They just got the notice that they'll have to be wearing masks. And my husband, who is vaccinated and a teacher, will be wearing a mask as well. And it is a lot better than having to have your brain tickled. I would agree with you on that with the whole vaccine. So yes, I highly encourage the vaccine. Brain tickling or a little more aggressive, as you said, yeah, that's not so much fun. I do have another question. What priorities do you see regarding upgrading our infrastructure?
Well, thanks, Jen. And just one last comment on the previous issue on the COVID. I think all of us were hoping that we would be firmly on the glide path out of this pandemic going forward. And it's frustrating, I have to say, in a country where we have vaccines so readily available, which is not the case in a lot of communities around the world. Again, at this energy ministerial meeting, I met ministers from countries where they don't have the vaccines available, and they were so eager to get the vaccine so that they could move to some normalcy as well. So I think that's the frustrating part for a lot of us is we have the vaccines, we have them available. We all just need to step up, do what we need to do on that front. And then we can all get to that glide path. We can all get to those schools that are much more conducive to learning. We can go out and enjoy life and all the things that we took for granted, probably took too much for granted before the pandemic. But it all requires the vaccines. This is the way out. This is the way we get out of this period. So hopefully this Delta variant is a bit of a wake-up call. Hopefully we all do what we need to do and are part of the solution going forward on that end. So on infrastructure, we spent a lot of time already in this new administration, the Secretary, myself, others, thinking about what our infrastructure needs are in the DOE complex. It is a big complex, lots of labs, lots of facilities, the power marketing administrations, the nuclear sites, a lot of infrastructure needs out there, and a lot of infrastructure needs certainly when it comes to emergency response, emergency operations centers in particular. We are looking to try to improve that physical infrastructure as much as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can, working, of course, with Congress, our funders. You've certainly seen this administration really put a priority on infrastructure. It's very pleasing to see the bipartisan group of senators making some significant progress. This week, hopefully, they will pass the legislation from the Senate side on that important piece of infrastructure more broadly for our country, beyond just the DOE infrastructure. So we'll continue leaning in on the infrastructure. We'll continue making those investments for the long haul. Frankly, it's just about supporting, whether it's our emergency managers or others who are using a variety of our facilities and infrastructure. We need to make the investments now. It makes all of our work more efficient, more effective going forward. And again, we'll try to do everything that we can to shepherd those improvements along, make the case in Congress. And I think we're having some good success on that side. So we'll continue working on that, John.
I appreciate your efforts on that, and Godspeed with all of that. I do have one last question if you're available. The last one comes, what priorities do you have for us in the upcoming year?
So there's a lot of priorities, of course. This is a historic time, historic moment of opportunity. What we see in the U.S. Congress, for example, with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then there's contemplated $3.5 trillion of additional funding, much of which would come to DOE because of the important work that we do, whether it's on electricity or nuclear, advanced nuclear reactors or CCUS or hydrogen, a full range of energy technologies going forward. And our priority is to try to get as many, more broadly, our priority is try to get as many of these tools and authorities as we possibly can, and then effectively deploy those tools, manage those tools, manage those resources going forward. So there's a lot of priorities in this department administration going forward. from an emergency management perspective, what we need to do is, one, make sure that we all get out of this COVID crisis as safely as we can, as effectively as we can. So that's certainly a priority. Again, the vaccines are the way to do that most effectively, and whatever we can do from our end to support along those lines. More broadly, we need to build off the 35 years of incredible work, incredible partnerships, sharing experiences, sharing what's worked across the platform so that we can improve things going forward. I think one of humanity's greatest abilities is to adapt and improve. We've shown it in the last year and a half where we've had to adapt and improve over the pandemic. But we just need to keep doing that more broadly over this next, whether it's 35-year period of time or even more years and years into the future when it comes to emergency management along those lines. So let's learn from each other. Let's make improvements where we can. And your jobs are, I'm afraid to say, only going to get more challenging over time. We've got the more extreme weather. Hopefully we can mitigate climate change. We can reduce the carbon emissions like what we need to. That's part of what this 3.5 trillion of investment, a significant part of what that kind of investment is going to be made from Congress once they're successful along those lines to mitigate climate change. But the impacts of climate change are already, certain amounts of impacts are already baked into the system under the existing levels of emissions. And all the science tells us we're going to have more extreme weather events that we're going to need to be dealing with. And of course, you all are going to need to be preventing, providing resilience, and then managing those professionally, just as you've been doing. So we just need to be prepared. We need to support you all from DC and from headquarters here. And let's learn from each other. Let's be supportive of each other and all do our parts to, again, protect our assets, our physical assets, but even more importantly, our people, all the communities that we're a part of going forward. So thank you again for everything that you do. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you, at least for a few minutes virtually, and look forward to being your partners as we come out of this COVID crisis and continue to improve, help you all improve what you're doing going forward.
I can't thank you enough, and I look forward to this partnership on behalf of the EMI SIG community. And I will tell you this, in the last 6 years working with this group is up for the challenge that you put before us. And I'm just excited to see how we can help support your priorities in the upcoming year. Thank you so much for being with us, Deputy Secretary Turk. And I would just like everyone to enjoy a break until 10:15 a.m. That's Mountain Time. We'll look forward to seeing you back here at 10:15 or at your local time.
Thanks, everybody. Keep up the phenomenal work.